There we go. That's where the good live is. I got to make the video big and I got to move it small. Make it big, then move it small. That's how you go live. That's the process. I have red hot tea right here, but it's not yet steeped. This is the only tea that I can steep live. I'll show you. I know this is a big fan favorite right here, so it's steeping in there. Typically, I'll drink a black tea, what have you. I like a lot of black teas, or sometimes some rooibos. Don't want to oversteep those, but the tea that's going on right now, yeah, there he is peppermint. And I find you cannot get peppermint tea too pepperminty. It's one of the interesting, kind of like a fun fact about tea, and specifically peppermint tea, is that you can't oversteep it, so you don't have to worry about that. I don't, please, people don't write me in letters to this show. We've had a lot of people writing in letters lately. No one's written in letters. We've had a lot of people writing in letters saying, hey, you can oversteep tea. Adam, I want to make a correction. Can you have a corrections and omissions part of your live show where you talk about the things you've stepped over that I've spotted? So please don't write in. I'm right about this one. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate that. This is a this is a shirt that how can I word this? As a leader, I need to be a bit conscious of. So what that means is that how one of the ways that people are most resistant to getting present to the impact of their leadership is the way they dress. And so I'll talk about that right out of the gate, thanks to you mentioning this rad shirt. What up, Jared? The way we dress it creates a particular kind of listening for us, as does the way we look, the way we speak, the way we sound, et cetera, et cetera. So like the fact that my skin is this color means that certain people are going to have a particular kind of listening for me, and other kinds of people will have a different kind of listening for me. And as Evan just said, this shirt has some loudness. So when you see me in this shirt, there's an immediate impact, right? People noticing me in this shirt are going to have right out of the gate a particular kind of opinion formed. Now, they may do a bunch of stuff like try not to hear that opinion, try to tell themselves, don't think that, it's wrong to have a judgment. But notwithstanding all of that, it happens, it exists, it gets created. So remember that our job as leader is to be always present and responsible for our impact. In this case, responsible doesn't mean you don't do it. It doesn't mean you're like, oh, because this shirt's loud, it's going to have an impact on certain people, therefore I don't wear the shirt. That would be sort of taking this and making a rule out of it, which is never the game of leadership. As soon as you have a rule for leadership, you're in trouble, because now you cannot be in the moment working with and in a dance with the moment to determine what best serves the moment. Now you have a rule, regardless of where the moment is. So when I have a shirt like this, especially if I'm going early today because I'm doing a presentation for a client. I'm speaking with some of his people at a mastermind he's running, and I'm not yet sure if I'm going to wear this shirt. There's a bunch of people that are investors, sort of looking to step up their game to the next level, and you can imagine if I show up wearing a shirt like this, that it might have a particular kind of impact. And it's not to say that I can't overcome that impact. I can show up in this shirt and then I can speak in such a way that they're like, okay, this guy gets it, right? So there's the listening they immediately have for me based on how I show up. And then I speak with authority. I establish some credibility. Okay, great. This guy's good. We've moved past that listening and now they can hear me. But not everyone necessarily will be able to hear past this shirt. Some people may see this shirt and just be like, fuck this guy. He's got nothing to do to me, and I've lost them. And part of our job as a leader is to be present to that impact, to be aware, even the way I dress is a way that I'm speaking into the world. The way that I dress has an impact in the world. And my job as leader is always to get present and responsible for my impact. Is this the impact that is best going to serve what I'm committed to creating as a leader in this moment? One of the exercises we do sometimes with our leadership team, and we did this back when I used to train coaches as well, is to reflect what we'd call people's presentation. How did their physical presentation occur to us? What's the impact of it? And it's a really fascinating thing to do with people for a few reasons. The first is because we don't realize ourselves how much of an effect our presentation has in the world. I want to take a moment here to acknowledge accomplishment coaching. This is where I first heard this concept of presentation. But you could call it like your physical presence or your stature or whatever. I'm using their words, so I want to acknowledge them. And I want to turn on this fan. So one of the things that will reflect is people's posture. You know, if you are with someone and they're standing like this versus like this, that tells a story. And we think, well, when this is reflected to us, we'll often pass it off like, oh yeah, I'm tired, or oh yeah, I don't know, X, Y, or Z. You know, I was working my shoulders out yesterday, so I'm tired. Which is kind of like a way of making it okay that I'm doing that thing, but you're still the effect of its impact. And so the leader's job is not to be like, well, my shoulders are tired. You know, like imagine if Martin Luther King went up like sort of bedoggedly and was like, I have a dream, but I want to first, like, I worked my, no, he doesn't make an excuse for having worked his shoulders out. He is present to his listening. He's present to the impact he's creating, and he does what is necessary to best serve the impact he's committed to having. So that's the first thing is it's amazing what we start to notice when people provide us reflection like this. When we really create a container where we can provide powerful reflection and help people get present to our impact, we start to realize, wow, even the way like where my eyes go or where is my attention drawn based on how this person's dressed. Hey, Heather, what does this person's posture tell you about them? And it tells us so much, most of which is unintended on our part, all of which tends to be rooted in there's some payoff from it. I'll give you another example. Tall women have it rough growing up. A tall woman draws attention. That attention can be kind of problematic. Often it cannot feel safe. And women, by and large, are often trained to be small. Don't take up too much space. Don't be loud. You'll get called bossy or shrill. Don't be the center of attention. You'll get sexually harassed. You'll get whatever, whatever, whatever. These are all not good things. So what a tall woman learns from that training is to shrink herself. And so tall women tend to have rounded shoulders. Their posture often can become very, not all of them, but it's something I often notice when developing leadership is that women with some significant height can become quite hunched. Their posture can get quite poor. And it's often a function of the fact that at some point they had this training that taught them, hey, keep yourself small. Don't be too loud or big or shine, or you don't want to be seen. It's not safe to be seen. And so there's unwinding to do in those instances. There's the opportunity for that person to own their height, to take up all of the space they're here to take. Hey Mia, I'm just talking about this shirt I'm wearing for everyone that's just joining in. The other way, like I'll tell you another version of this story, which was when I first began training as a coach and I got this kind of feedback, I still dressed well. Like my outfits were put together, but they were so loud. Like my style was a barrier between you and me. I couldn't really be responsible for its impact. So I'd wear like I don't think I have one in here, but like a bright purple Kangol hat, and then like jeans and a nice purple shirt with a bow tie, kind of like you might expect Samuel L. Jackson to show up at a suit and tie affair. There was kind of like a funkiness to it. It spoke a bit to my hip hop roots, but like, which is all fine and good, right? Like the outfits looked cool, but what was important for me to realize was that they created a bit of an impact, which was like people were left like, who is this guy? What is the deal with this guy? Do I take this guy seriously? Do I want him to start breakdancing, or do I listen to him as though he's going to help me change my life? So the way I dressed created some confusion in the space. And it created like a bit of like, what actually is this guy? And none of that is a problem, assuming that's the impact I want to have. But if I want to show up around a bunch of investors and really transform their relationship to supporting people to get over their objections, then maybe that's not the initial impact I want to have. Maybe I want to take that listening off the table and out of the way. And so in that instance, I might instead just wear a plain white shirt, or I might wear a suit and tie. When you start to give people feedback on how they dress, they will get very defensive often. And they will get defensive because they are feeling like they are being told what they have to do. So they're now creating themselves as a victim or at the effect of the fact that other people will have a listening, right? Other people believe that tattoos make you stupid. Fuck them. I'm going to wear my tattoo and I'm going to prove them wrong. You can do that. That is a choice. It just might be a bit harder to get your point across. It might be a bit slower when you're sort of giving people this fuck you energetically, like, listen to me, fuck you for not listening to me right out of the gate, listen to me. And that puts us at the effect. That is not really what leadership is about. People confuse it with leadership because they believe, like, I'm doing what's true for me. But remember, that's really second stage leadership. Just to remind you of those stages, the first stage, we're all concerned about other people. The second stage of leadership, we're concerned about ourselves. Fuck you, I do what I do, and you listen or you don't, and it's none of my business. At the third stage of leadership, we are asking the question, what am I most committed to beyond myself or anyone else in this room, and how do I best serve that commitment? And so a shirt like this might not be the best way to serve that commitment. Wearing Birkenstocks and sandals and suspenders and shorts might not be the best costume, the best outfit for you to wear when you're speaking to a bunch of investment bankers. So it's not about making you have to do something. It's about having you get present to how you're best going to create your impact in every single way that you have an impact, and then supporting you to develop the ability to choose how you show up. These people that are like, fuck you, I'm showing my tat. They're using the language of freedom, like, I do what I want to do. Yeah, except if what there is to do that would really move your life forward is wear a suit. And then you can't because you're so locked in this, fuck you, you can't make me wear a suit. So it's really fascinating when we start to work with people and bring into the space their dress, the way they are showing up to the world, the way they occur. Some of the common things that I'll share, some of the things I notice are cleavage. What else do we have? What do we have for men? Like, even this shirt is buttoned kind of low. I'm conscious of that too. I'm like, I could do up one more button. It sends a bit of a message maybe. I got on a call with a client once and she said, you look sexy today. And I was like, thank you. Gonna note that I'm gonna be a little more conscious because that's not really what I want to be putting into the space between me and a client. I want to keep that space really clean and pristine. Men, I find often it's sort of their almost disheveledness. So it's not to say all men are disheveled, but men often can just be like, fuck it, whatever, I'm not going to really iron my shirt. Well, that has a huge impact, right? If you don't iron your shirt, you're telling people, I didn't put the extra 5 minutes into this presentation, right? Like, I wasn't willing to do that. And so people are going to listen to your speaking through that same lens. In the court of law, one of the ways this gets a little bit perfectionistic, a little bit perfectly perfectionistic, is when you're creating a legal brief, you have to go through that thing time and time again to make sure you haven't missed apostrophes or like that there's a misspelling of a word. Because if the judge reads that and sees your mistake, it puts into their mind the question of doubt. They start to ask themselves, if Adam didn't catch this typo, what else didn't he catch in his argument? So this is what humans do, right? We take something we notice here and then we ask that same question over here. We analogize. We take it as a metaphor. So men often disheveled, not matching their belt with their shoes, like really simple things, right? We're not saying you have to go and buy the most expensive suits and the best shoes. It's more simply an opportunity to notice the impact you might not otherwise notice that you're having. And, I'll say this, like Andrew says, I realize I've got a pretty casual look. We don't have to be fancy either, right? If casual is what will resonate with our people, awesome. And all right, see you, Heather. Have a good call. And there's times when, like, if I was, oh yeah, this was before I'd done any of this work. I was working in software as a GIS developer, and I flew up north in my province to Prince George, which is sort of It's only about maybe a third of the way up BC. British Columbia is a very large, big province, as are most of the provinces in Canada. But it was kind of like anything north from there is swamp, and there's not really any settlements. There's like very small settlements, but really small. And so I was in this town called Prince George, working with people that wanted to create. It was their, I guess, their regional government, their city government. They wanted to create some software to better track fires or something along those lines. And I showed up in a suit because I was nervous and oh, I want to make a good impression. And I came into this room and they're all wearing like jeans and t-shirts. And one of the people, as myself and my partner, I guess, came into the room, one of the people said, "Well, this looks very corporate." So that's a great example of where wearing a suit actually didn't serve. Now, it's not to suggest that was fatal, right? I could work with them and sort of bring my being to bear. But in the future, next time I go to an event like that, I probably wouldn't dress in my finest. I would definitely not be wearing a bow tie, for example, or a top hat or something like that. So it's a long story about a shirt, but we always want to be present to our impact. Landmark calls this being in the listening. Yeah, I love that too, Leanne. Hi, Leanne. Nice to have you with us. Being in the listening, being present to the listening, being aware of the listening, and being responsible for the listening that we're speaking into. And the reason we would do this is because it gives us access to power. It lets me be responsible for how my communication is landing. And the more responsible I can be for how my communication is landing, the more access I have to do something about it, to change the way things are going. Um, let's see. I think Sarah said, I appreciate I mainly look like I've had a fight with a hedge, just always seem to be running out of time. Probably need to say yes to less so I have the space to show up how I really want to. I'm I read that and I'm like, has that been my experience of Sarah? I've not had that experience of you, Sarah. At least the first part, like you looked like you had a fight with a hedge. So my hunch is that might be some of your self-deprecation. Um, but showing up on time is another example where like being in integrity around our time really sends a message. I have heard people tell me about like I have friends or coaches, friends who have coaches or therapists, and they're like, yeah, my therapist is chronically late. I'm like, no, that doesn't fly with me. Because if my clients are showing up late, we're gonna have a conversation about it. And so if I'm gonna be late for the call, my clients are gonna know, I'm gonna let them know, I'm gonna check and see if there's anything to clean up. I'm gonna be responsible for that impact. And part of being responsible for an impact means that you don't just keep having it over and over and over again and apologizing for it. So time is a beautiful place where we can sort of notice, oh, I'm creating a particular way that people listen for me. People listen when I say 9 o'clock, I'll be there. They hear 9:10. They hear that I'm not good for my word. I'm not reliable to do what I say I will do. Huh. How else is that going to bleed into what I want to create in the world? Where are my chat topics? Manifesto. Oh yeah, I brought up. So I posted a coaching manifesto I'd written. It was interesting because you may have seen this post. I posted on Facebook, and if you didn't, well, tough beans. You're going to hear a little bit about it now. So I wrote this originally maybe 6 months ago, and posted it at that time. And I wrote it because I was inspired by a former teacher of mine, John Wineland, who wrote a teaching manifesto. Had a bunch of stuff like this. I thought, oh, that's so great. And I was like, I'm going to create one of those for coaching. I think that's really valuable. And so I wrote these 40 um, principles, I guess we could call them, about coaching. And at the top, I acknowledged thanks, Leanne. I acknowledged my teacher. I acknowledged John. I said, I'm really inspired by the manifesto John shared, and I've created one for coaching. And I posted it in it, and it got like some likes and very few shares. I don't know if it got any shares actually. I was like, this is awesome. I love this thing. And so it was just yesterday. Right now I'm in the process of editing most of the spectrums of being because I've rewritten, I've extended it, blah, blah, blah. That process is happening. So I don't have a lot of off the cuff writing that's getting created, which means I have less to post in the mornings. And so I was searching for something and this just came up and I was like, you know what? That's a great thing. That's worthy of being posted more than once. I'm going to post that again. And this time it really caught some fire. It got shared about 10 times, a lot of comments. People really resonated with it. So I want to talk about a few of these things. Yes, you did, Evan, and you were the first, I think, to share it. I really appreciated that and your words. And it was an interesting lesson for me. In often I'm resistant to. I don't want to give people reruns. I don't want to give them the same thing over and over again. But what I kind of saw in this is there's some value in that sometimes. And if I think about it, I watch Seinfeld reruns constantly. I go on Netflix and I know what I'm going to watch. I'm probably going to put on the IT Crowd. I'm going to rewatch the US Office. I might put on Community. Like I might watch the US or UK Office. I'm going to watch the same shows because I love them. And so it it was kind of a neat opportunity to sort of break that story about how the world was a little bit. Like, oh, maybe there is value in resharing this stuff. Maybe it's worth revisiting some of this stuff. So that was pretty cool. Uh, the tea is ready. So we're gonna pour the tea. I can tell it's ready because my throat's getting a little parchy. That's how you can tell when tea is ready. Okay, got the gray mug. Here we go. Let's have that first sip. Mm. Oh yeah, that's good peppermint. Yeah, thanks for that, Nick. For those who don't follow every second of your life, we're grateful for it. It's so interesting, I see everything I post constantly. I'm present to it as I post it. And but lots of people don't, that's just the way these algorithms work, the way Facebook works. And I was thinking this manifesto in particular, I feel like is as I posted the second time, I just had this feeling like I think this is something that gets posted every 6 months and probably gets added to it. This time I added one thing, and I think this will grow. I don't know how big. It starts to get unwieldy after a point, but I feel we're at 41 right now. There's probably 50 total principles in there. So I'm going to just talk about a few of these. Let's talk about 13. Become insatiably curious. This is so stepped over, and it's stepped over for a bunch of reasons. It's part of what we teach and learn in the Creating Clients course is the gift of learning how to be and to generate fascination in the person across from you, to be insatiably curious, to reconnect with that childhood like, but why kind of energy that children have for better and for worse, right? Because it's a birthmark on my face. Please stop asking me about it. So what tends to happen a lot is we get to a point in our lives where we're frustrated with people because they do small talk and we hate small talk. And if you are someone that does small talk, to hell with you. I only talk to people that are interested in a deep conversation. There's so many problems with that particular attitude. I'm not going to address most of them. What I'm going to speak to is the fact that someone with this attitude is totally missing out on the gift that could come into being with their curiosity. Because the thing is that every human being is fascinating. Every human being has some crazy story in front of them and some fascinating history that led them to where they are. And some of the most interesting things occur as the most boring. Like when you're with someone and they're so boring and you're like, this person's boring and I just want to get away from them. There's such a beautiful opportunity there for you and them to get curious about that. Like, why is this person boring? What's going on? What is it that has them showing up this way? We don't tend to ask those questions because instead of being curious about how someone wound up the way they are, we instead relate to them as simply being a fixed entity. Oh, person X is boring. There's no boring children. That's not a thing. There's no children that just sit there and stare at a wall until they become 17 and then start getting a job and be boring at an ice cream parlor. That's not how it works. Children are fascinating, and all of us have this inner light. And so to become insatiably curious, what we must do is start to relate to people as like the light they began as. So we have to start to see or at least feel into the human behind what is presenting on the surface. What's presenting on the surface is just what we've learned to do. And we've all learned something to do. We've learned ways of being, ways of showing up, ways to occur to the world so that we get related to a certain way because that way of being related to is safe. You can ask these sort of questions of yourself silently. You don't have to be like, why are you boring? A kid might ask that, or a kid would just tell them they're boring. That's kind of shitty and rude and is going to hurt someone's feelings. But you can ask that question. You can be insatiably curious. And this is what it means to bring the being of coach and leader as opposed to doing coaching at someone. Usually, when coaches learn how to coach, they then go out and do coaching on everyone. They're like, I notice you're boring. I've done this at a networking event and it did not go well. I notice you're boring. Why is that? Don't do that. But we can be in that curiosity ourselves, and we can start to ask questions that align with it without being offensive to someone. So we can just be like, huh, as you talked about your job, you don't sound very excited about it. Like, do you like it, or what's the deal there? Oh, well, kind of, it's not bad. It makes good money. It's just, I don't know if it's what I really want to do. Oh, well, what do you really want to? So notice I'm not pushing them in a direction. I'm not trying to get them as a client. I'm just exploring my innate curiosity. And that will open up a world of possibility and opportunity to get to know someone. And it's going to do this other really cool thing, which is have them start to experience their own interest. Because the way you are experiencing them currently as being boring, that's how they're relating to themselves too. And so when you show up with someone and start to get curious and to relate to them as the light behind what's showing up, that gives them an opportunity to start to get present to it. The other thing that happens as we do this is you start to see how much easier sales can be, how much easier it can be to create prosperity. Because rather than trying to get people or figure out what's their pain point or whatever, you just start to get to be in conversations with people where you are curious about them. You're curious about the path they're on in life. You're curious about what they want to make happen. You're curious about what they're up to. And as you be curious about this stuff, a couple things will come to light. One, you're going to start to see places where you might serve them. Some of those places might be whatever service you offer. If you're a plumber and they're like, well, I really wish that I could, I mean, honestly, I don't want to work in laundry. I've always had this weird thing to be a plumber. Oh, amazing. Well, that's what I do. Is there anything you want to know about it? Like now there's an opportunity for you to serve them, not even offer them plumbing, but to serve them in some way. Or maybe they're like, oh, I'm struggling with not knowing what to do, and it feels like everything I do, I have to do. I don't have much choice. Oh, well, I read an amazing book that gave me a lot around that. Do you want to hear about it? So we can serve them that way. And sometimes the way that we can serve them is simply by providing what we already do for a career. Oh, wow, you want to do something, but you don't know how to get there. Well, that's what I do. I'm a coach. Do you want to have a conversation about that? My gift to you, no strings attached. Or, oh, wow, you're annoyed because it's not that your job's boring, it's that your toilets are exploding at home and you keep trying to figure out how to have non-exploding toilets and it doesn't seem to work. Well, I'm a plumber. Do you want to have a conversation about that? All from the seed planted by simply being curious about the human being in front of you. So this number 13 on this list, become insatiably curious, is always available, and it is the wellspring from which all of the prosperity in our practices gets created. Whatever you are practicing, whether it's plumbing, whether it's academia, whether it's selling software to other companies, all of it is grown from this willingness to be in an abundance of connection and insatiably curious with people. The other one I'm going to talk about, actually, I'm going to read what you guys wrote here first. Yeah, thanks. Andrew says, like, sometimes I want to read these things because they're good for me as well as everyone else. You'll get that content when you share it a second time in front of new people. And sometimes a second revisit creates insight for folks like me that don't get it the first time. Absolutely. And then Sarah also says, I'm always surprised how things don't actually get seen first and even the second time of sharing. It's good to share once, probably worth revisiting. Yeah, I love that. And Sarah, really relate to the light behind. Love that visual. Yeah. It's amazing. I'm just reflecting how I spent the first 30 years of my life being brilliant about determining faster and sooner how the person in front of me was as a human being, not who they were behind the way they were showing up. I basically got better and faster at relating to them as a fixed object to the point where someone would be like, hey, and I'd be like, this is a boring person. They're not up to much in their life and they're not going to have much of an interesting conversation with me. And then from that assessment, I created the conversation that was the expression of that assessment, which, as you can imagine, was boring and didn't offer me anything and blah, 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 blah. And they probably had a similar experience with me. So whatever we are looking for and seeing and bringing into the space of our seeing, we will create. It's kind of funny, right? Like I thought I was getting better and better at figuring people out, and I was getting actually further and further away from an ability to really figure people out. I was getting better and better at judging them and holding them as fixed for the way they showed up on the surface. It's too bad. But hey, it's cool. I can distinguish it, and I don't do that anymore. Now I get to live this beautiful life where I get to see people as they truly are. Number 25 on this list is when you truly love someone, you can say anything. I first heard Tony Robbins say this. Tony Robbins, that man cares a lot about people. You can think about him as you choose to, and I do as well. And I have thought, well, I'm going to share my thoughts, it turns out. I think I've not been to UPW. So that's Unleash the Power Within, and he's got a bunch of other stuff. I think Tony Robbins has done a great deal of work on himself, and I'm very clear that he cares a great deal about people. What I notice tends to happen with people that go to his events is the events they're like an ayahuasca ceremony. It's like life changing. They're so aware of something. They're like, holy crap, they make a powerful declaration in their life. Amazing. That's so valuable. But then what happens is these people don't tend to invest in something beyond that. So they go to that event like it's a one and done, like this is going to shock me into the life I meant to lead. This is going to wake me up. As opposed to this distinction we might talk about if we have time of ongoing committed support rather than support as needed. Those individual events tend to be very support as needed kind of styles of events. Things aren't going well. I really think I need to like have something to shock me out of it. Boom, you're super inspired, but you don't have any continual support on the backside of that. And consequently, you come back and the world around you pushes you back into the shape you were before you left. And the reason that it does that is because you created that world around you as the shape you were before you left. So you've created a world that fits you like a glove. And so when you come back from this event, you might have this new awareness, this new whatever. You come, but you're like, you slowly get pushed back into the shape you were. And so where that leaves people is that they are like inspired. It has a half-life, and then they need to go to the next event to get inspired again, and then it has a half-life. And so they tend to have these cycles without any real underlying lasting transformation. That being said, I think Tony Robbins is brilliant. I think he does beautiful work, and I think he's a man who is in his own work, which I appreciate. So I don't think Tony Robbins is doing bad in the world. I think he's doing a great deal of good. Just like I don't think ayahuasca ceremonies are doing bad in the world. I think they do a great deal of good. But I think that people mistake them as the answer that will solve something as opposed to like one part of a larger suite of things that will support us to create the transformation we want. Okay, enough about that. That's not why I'm talking about 25. When you truly love someone, you can say anything. I heard Tony Robbins say this early on when I started coaching, a little over a decade ago now, I think. And I was like, oh, got it. And so if I love them, I can say anything. Okay, got it. Well, I can say anything. And so then what I then started doing was saying to people, look, I love you, and blah. I love you, pow, right in your face. And what I didn't realize at the time was that saying I love you, thinking the words I love you, insisting I love you, trying to convince you that I love you, all of these things are facsimiles. They're proxies for love. They're not the real thing. They're the real element of love is an energetic thing. It's a way that I'm holding you internally. It's a way I'm relating to you in the moment. It's something so much deeper than the words. And in fact, if you really love someone, saying the words is unnecessary. We might still want to say it because we're vocal creatures. We communicate a lot through our language, but like it becomes less necessary to say the words I love you when I truly love you. And so what was missing for me was that I was taking, oh, when you really love someone, you can say anything. And I felt like, oh, right, I'm just going to great, I can love people and I'm going to insist that I love them and I'm going to say the powerful thing. But that was missing the mark entirely. And people weren't left in the experience of being loved. They were left in the experience of someone telling them they loved them while simultaneously not totally feeling that, and then be given a piece of pointed feedback that kind of hurt to land in there. And so that's why number 26 is equally, it's the companion. You can't have 25 without 26. In order to truly love someone, you must continually move your own stuff out of the way. Continually move your own stuff out of the way. Continually, because we don't finish. You're going to, if anyone here has ever been in a relationship, many of you probably have, it's not like you overcome stuff and you're like, oh, so glad we overcame that. And now we can just live the life of the romantic couple in the comedy that we watched yesterday. So good, so great. No, it it shows up again in different ways. Like friction is friction, conflict is growth trying to happen. And so we have to continually find the places where we are out of love with someone, where we are not willing to love them, where we are judging them or holding them as less than perfect exactly as they are, and take that on like it's our work. We have to continually do that. And it's truly our work over and over and over again. I have a hair right here on my neck. I don't like it. It's annoying. I agree, Andrew, with your statement here that being curious and creating possibility seems to be one of the biggest takeaways for those of us in the Creating Clients course. It's been really cool to see that light go on for us with this. I think you've seen the same thing I have, which is sort of excitement starting to show up in the opportunity to connect with people. I remember when I first was trained as a lawyer, you do a lot of schmoozing, right? It's like we had I didn't go to this, but there was a night like how to behave at a wine and cheese. Ugh, really? Oh, so gross. And they had some tricks like have a second tie in your car in case you spill wine on your tie. Oh man, it's not horrible advice. It's just like that's not where I want to be having that's not the conversation I want to be in. So there's a lot of like, how do you put the perfect foot forward? How do you not screw this up? And like, here's how to hold the cheese plate with the wine glass and you can shake with your other hand. And, stuff like that. It's not that it's bad advice. It's just that it's on top of a context. The context being, we must be perfect. There is no room for you to be a human here. So then what's the best way? So then, of course, the question is, how is the best way for me to be perfect? And then the answer is what this provided. And so during this time, I remember, hey, there's a young lawyers networking event. Go to it, meet fellow people at firms, because you're in law school, you're going to need to get to know them so that you can then possibly get a job once you graduate and, blah, blah, blah. And I hated these events and I hated them because I felt like I've got to schmooze it up. I got to be schmarmy and interesting and ask questions about them. And all of it was me trying to fabricate something. Like it wasn't me connecting with a human being. It was me trying to show up as lawyer, the way lawyer is meant to show up, and me trying to ask questions that are appropriate to ask in that regard, and so much artifice. And I'm not saying that that artifice was required. I'm just saying that's how I was relating to it. And so therefore that's how I was showing up to it. And part of the gift in this getting insatiably curious and exploring curiosity and learning how to be in this kind of way of relating to people is that all of that stuff falls away. You can let go of trying to be the right way that a coach is meant to be. You can let go of trying to be the way that a lawyer needs to be. You can just show up and be a genuine human being with them. And that cuts through all the bullshit. Anytime you show up and be a genuine human being with someone, that creates a marked impact because the world tends not to be very genuine. We're trying to put forward our best face, just like I was. And so when someone can just show up and be genuine and connected and curious about someone and want to know more about them, that's magnetic. It draws us. I see we have one watcher, so not popular content. I don't care. I'm still going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about a couple questions that were sent to me. And I think, so this is going to tie in with being at the effect of something versus being at cause, which is really a leadership and a coaching distinction. And it's a distinction in service of you being more of a leader for your life, whatever is going on in your life. So you can be at the effect maybe I'll start with I'm going to start by defining these. So at the effect, at cause, victim, owner / responsible are other ways to describe it. The trouble with a word like victim is we have so much stuff, so much baggage attached to it. It sounds so derogatory. It's hard for us to use that word. Just like masculine and feminine energy gets caught up in a conversation about gender and gender roles, which is problematic. So alpha and omega can be better terms for those. So at the effect, at cause. At the effect means that what I say I'm about, what I say I'm committed to, what I say I want in my life is at the effect of something external to me. So I could be like, I'm sad and I don't want to be sad because of the way the election went. And I wish I could do this stuff, but I'm just sad and taken out because of the election. Or maybe an even more salient example would be someone saying like, look, I really want to build my business, but all this craziness around the elections going on. So, I mean, that person's at the effect of the election. They are saying that they want to do something, and then they are putting their ability to create that at the effect of this thing going on in the moment, this circumstance called the election. At cause means that we are the cause in creating the thing we say we want to do. We are at cause to create it, regardless of our circumstances. So the leader who's at the effect of the election is like, well, I would be doing this, but hey, the election's on and it's crazy. So I'm just going to watch that and drink maybe some wine. The leader who's at cause for what they want to create says, hey, I'm really committed to this thing. And the election's bonkers, and I'm going to do it anyhow. So I'm going to turn off all the TVs because I know that's distracting for me. I'm going to sit in front of my computer. I'm going to work. I'm going to put myself on wireless off so I don't have any distractions. I'm going to write for 2 hours because that's what I'm committed to creating in the world. This applies everywhere in your life. And from now to the day you die, you will continually be at cause in some places and at the effect in others. The trap here is that we relate to it being at the effect of something as bad. And therefore, it makes it hard for us to distinguish when we're at the effect of something because now we have a vested interest in not being bad. So we're like, I'm not at the effect of something. How dare you say that? Yeah, now you're at the effect of me saying that you're at the effect of something. Whoops. So we want to let go of this idea that they're good or bad and just have these be neutral distinctions. They're just qualities of being, ways of showing up. So now we're going to go into the question, and then I'll bring it back to this, and then I think we'll wind down for today. So someone wrote to me and said, they've got a partner, and the partner's wanting more compassion and warmth and stuff in their communication, in the way that they share specific things. And this person's saying like, hey, I'm clear and I'm working on it. And I have some resistance in the sense that if I really keep looking on my side and continue to do my work over here, doesn't this excuse my partner from receiving, like, from being responsible on their side of the fence? Like, doesn't this give them the perfect get out of jail free card where they can just be like, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. So like if I'm always, this is a common concern, right? Like if I as a leader go first, if I as a leader am willing to be responsible for what's going on first, doesn't that mean that my staff then just say, yeah, you're right, it is your fault, and don't take a look? That's why most of us don't go first. It's why we don't apologize first. It's why we don't want to take responsibility. Because we're like, if I take responsibility, then I'm letting them off the hook. And I need them to take responsibility. So that's not what a leader is about. It's totally human. There's nothing wrong with it. I can relate to it. I do that myself. I'm like, but they're wrong. And they need to admit they're wrong. Preferably on bended knee in front of me with a written engraved tablet. But if not that, they at least need to admit they're wrong. Superhuman of us. But the work of leader, wherever it is you're leading, whether it's in your relationship or somewhere else, the work of leader is to take a look on their side and see how they can be responsible for the impact they're having. It's like, hey, I got it. Yeah, it sounds like there's a way you're showing that I'm showing up that leads to this. There's also a point where the leader might have to, like, this is where it gets tricky, because there's a point where a leader who is committed to being at cause might be like, I notice what's happening is this. my partner points to what I'm doing. I acknowledge, I share what I can be responsible for, and nothing changes. And that might be the point where the leader might have to be like, huh, so it seems like the way that's going isn't creating the impact I want to create. And maybe what there is for me to do is to bring this to my partner and be like, hey, like I notice I keep talking about being responsible. I keep trying to do my work. I've never heard you be responsible for anything, and I'm left feeling like I'm alone in this. So can we talk about that? And that might be the place for the leader to show up at cause in that moment. This is challenging because it's hard to do on our own. Right? This is why we benefit from coaches, because there's this point in my relationship where um, I kind of ended up in my life working without a lot of boundaries. I didn't create many boundaries. And in Bay's upbringing, boundaries were, you weren't allowed to have boundaries. No boundaries were allowed. Having a boundary was a dangerous, like asserting a boundary was a dangerous thing. It would get you smacked by her mom. Not safe. And and so that dynamic to some extent played out in our relationship. And there came this point where we had a fight and they had screamed at me. Totally fine. I'm sure I was playing out some side of that on my end. And I brought it to my coach and I was sharing with her, like I was really trying to embody the masculine energy as I'd been trained in it. So I was like, this happened and I'm really standing there and I'm breathing and I'm trying to just hold space. And my coach was like, why are you doing that? I was like, well, I'm kind of trying to be a good man. And she's like, yeah, is that what a good man is? I was like, well, I don't know. I guess it kind of seems like I was trying to do the right thing. She's like, yeah, that's kind of what it occurs. And she was inviting me to consider that I kept trying to do this thing and it wasn't creating anything different. She was like, is it changing things? Is it creating the result that you want to, is it creating the result that you want to have created? And I was like, no, not so much. She said, great. Okay. So you might look at this through the lens of boundaries. And like, what is your boundary? What are you okay with people doing to you in a conversation? Imagine it wasn't your wife. Imagine it was just anyone. Where's the line for you? What are you okay with? And I was pretty clear, like, I'm not okay with someone screaming at me. Like, I would leave. I'm not okay with someone physically touching me, like shoving me or pushing me or punching me or anything like that. That's a line. And I shared with her, I'm really worried, Rachel, that this is me not looking on my side and doing my work, though. Like, I'm really worried this is me being irresponsible and saying, whatever it is, and just sort of being that guy who's closed off and unwilling to take a look. And she said, Adam, over here, it really seems like there's a bigger edge for you to assert a boundary and not keep collapsing than for you to just let things keep going on as they go on. That's hard for me to see because the way I'm programmed is what is it? Number 3 in the coaching manifesto, do your own work first. I try my best to live by that. I can get that principle can become a sticky rule for my ego when it becomes no matter what, the answer is for me to go get coached and figure out how better to be with what's showing up. Instead of those times when it's like my work is to assert a boundary and to just be like, no, this is not okay. So I share that story because it's a good example, I think, of how when we try to do this on our own, we can get caught in the same loop. We can be like, I'm trying to follow this like manifesto Adam put in front of me, or I'm trying to do my own work. I'm trying my hardest. But without the benefit of a coach to give us the altitude, you're trying your hardest to do your own work can actually keep you going in the same circle. So it can be very, very, very sticky when we're trying to take this on our own. It doesn't mean that you're going to cause harm in the world necessarily. It doesn't mean that you're not going to advance in your life. It just means you're robbing yourself of some of the gifts that are available through this work when you don't get the benefit of someone external to yourself that can really provide this kind of feedback. Pro tip: whether your partner, boyfriend, husband, dad, son, mother are coaches or leaders or something, they're not someone outside of yourself. They are fully enmeshed in your world. I promise you. Don't let yourself fall into that trap. It's a really easy trap to fall into because well, let me put it this way. We can justify anything to ourselves. That's our head's job. Justify something to myself. My heart wants to do this. Head goes, great, let me justify it, and then we'll do it. Or my heart doesn't want to do that. My head's like, justify this, and then we won't do it. That's what our head does. And so the reason these loopholes for like getting supported are so sticky is because first they help us alleviate, they help us get out of our fear. Often when coaches are coaching their friends, like close friends, or their parents, or their children, or whatever, or doing like some partnered thing, it's alleviating the fear of scarcity that there won't be enough clients. It's alleviating the fear of scarcity that there won't be enough money if they make this ongoing, committed kind of investment. And so any decision that has fear involved, we're going to have a bit of a, it's going to be easy to go the way that our fear would push us. And so we're like, oh, I know I'm meant to get a coach, but here's someone that's willing to partner with me. So that would be a stopgap. And then our head goes, great, let's justify that. Let's come up with the reasons and the explanations for why this makes sense. Well, I don't think this person would, I'm coaching this person because I don't think they'd be open to working with any other coach. No, and especially not if you're coaching them for whatever rate you're coaching them at. Like, why would they? There's no one standing for them to do something different. Or no, I really think that this person that I'm working with is able to be impartial. We're really clear with each other. Yeah, except you can't be because you're in each other's business. You can only be so clean. It just that's the way it works. So how did I get on this soapbox, guys? What was I talking? Oh, was I talking about at effect, at cause? Oh, yeah, I was talking about how sticky it is, how challenging it is to see this stuff. Like, this is what I love about this question we just were speaking to about working with your partner and finding the place for you to be responsible is that what occurs to us as a thing for us to do is not always the thing for us to do. And having the benefit of a leader who's got their hand on your shoulder really goes a long way. Okay, I've got to go and prep for this next conversation that I'm going to be in. Let's see, what am I going to tell you about, those of you still watching? Well, I'm obviously going to talk about the Creating Clients course because it's amazeballs. In that course, you get trained and create the transformation so as to embody these principles in the manifesto in your client creation practice. For example, everyone is light. Find and see the light. Excuse me. Become insatiably curious. Like, these are the ways that you learn to create clients. So we support you in seeing how to make that happen, seeing the common pitfalls. Hey, Anna, I was speaking to one of the ICF chapters. They brought me in to do 4 sessions on this. And I was sharing about the first principle and how it's about connection. We have to get in connection, relationship with people. And one of the people in the chat wrote, this just feels so tacky. And I was like, oh, awesome. And so I brought her on and I acknowledged her for sharing that. And I said, like, tell me what about this feels tacky? Like, help me understand. She was sharing, well, like, I've got that friend who's like the realtor and he's just going after everyone in the network. And he's like, oh, I'm just connecting with them. And then he's pitching them straight away. And this is the part that gets missed. I was like, exactly. It's so obnoxious. And what I want to draw a distinction here is that person's not connecting. He's using the words of connection, but what he's actually focused on is the proposal. He's stuck in the proposal. And so to really learn to create these principles as a way of being so that we don't have to go and do sales, we just go and be enrolling for people in their lives, we have to sweep all of the stuff off the table. We have to start by removing all of the concerns about proposing and coaching and, oh my God, how am I going to get them somewhere, off the table, so we can begin by laying the foundation of just becoming fascinated by someone and connecting with them. And if we can start there, what happens is that you get a bunch of people that you're now just talking to, not because you have to get them somewhere, not because they're the right people, not because they're the right clients or any of that, but just because you are finding that there is a joy available in connecting. From there, everything starts to flow much more easily because now you've got the faucet on. And so each of these steps is kind of that same revelatory way of showing up. And what gets created is a transformation internally where it'll sound crazy to hear me say this. You can talk to Andrew. He's very vocal in the comments. He's awesome to have with us. Like, you really do create a transformation and you start to relate to this differently. And not only do you feel different, but you see possibility in the world where previously the only possibility was, fuck, I either have to do this thing I hate, or I got to hire someone to do that thing I hate, or I got to go in-house and be a coach there so I don't have to do the thing I hate. So that course starts in January. It's $1,000. It's very low cost. So if you're kind of like, man, I love Adam's work, but I really want a bit of a deeper cut. I want to get more around him. That's a great way to join in, and it benefits you regardless of whether you're a coach, a leader, so you can enroll people and stuff, a plumber that wants to serve more people in the world. It's all available. It's really a miraculous course. It's blown my socks off. I'm like, holy crap, I didn't think this was good. I was like, oh, do a course because that's what I'm called to. Stupid spirit telling me to do stuff. Spirit was right once again. So if you are interested in that, I'll put the link in the comments right here. It is adamquiney.com/client creation, all one word. On my computer, I just type AQCC and then it expands to that. Anna, that's cool. Someone called you an extrovert. Look at that. Who knew? Okay. That, I think, is everything that we've got for you today. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. I know it was a little bit earlier today. What else is coming up that I want to share with you? The weekend. And we're heading, presumably the US election is going to get called at some point. So however it goes, have a lot of compassion and heart for everyone involved. The challenge of the election is it pushes us, the challenge of a two-party system is it has people get defined as one or the other. And then when people are pushed into a binary state, when we relate to the world through this binary lens, it becomes like those people voted this way because they're racist, or those people voted this way because they don't care about our security or our economy. And that's not the truth in large part. And so there's a real opportunity here to be at cause for something. What I invite you to be at cause for is compassion for all mankind, for all humans, not just for them, but for your sake. Because if you really want to create a difference in the world, we have to start by seeing people beyond the way that they naturally occur to us on the surface. We got to see beyond the boredom. We got to see beyond they don't care about X, Y, or Z. We got to get to the person behind them. And so one of the best ways you can practice right now is with the 50% on the other side of the divide from you. Okay. Love you guys. Have an amazing weekend. Talk to you all soon.